Welcome to a special bonus episode of East Coast DNA. As we prepare to celebrate the East Coast Music Awards in Halifax, Nova Scotia, we were fortunate enough to have a moment to sit down with East Coast Music Association CEO, Andy McLean. Welcome to East Coast DNA.
Thank you for having me, Darcy. It's a pleasure to be here.
So it's nice to be able to talk to you as CEO of the East Coast Music Association. We've been running this podcast for almost a year and a half now. And so obviously East Coast DNA, we're covering the same region. Yep. So there's, I'm sure you have the same feeling. There's so many people around here. As much attention as we can get to these artists as possible is great. Before we get into talking about the ECMAs, which I know is primarily the point of this conversation, just for people that are viewing this that maybe are not sure who Andy McLean is, I did do a little bit of research, and I was aware of your name. I see your name out there and things going on in the industry, but I didn't know all of your back history. I realized that you were not originally born in Canada, but you moved here many moons ago and started your early career as a young lad as a musician. You're on the other side of the fence.
Correct.
So I did see the Tenants. You played with them, had some success there.
Yeah. I guess I came over in the early 80s from London. I'm born in Manchester originally, but came over with a bunch of demos, and within a few short months, it was very strange. Managed to secure a recording deal with the band that I actually joined, but then became the guitar player and co-writer, called the Tenants, and we signed a deal with Sony, and then took off and had a very successful hit single called Sheriff that apparently is in gold rotation. I still get my SOCAN checks for that, so thank you very much.
Oh, there you go. Actually, I did give it another listen when I was going through the notes, so you get some more royalties coming at some point there.
Oh, good, yeah.
What made you transition over to the other side of working in the industry and behind the scenes a little more?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I did a couple of albums with Sony for a major label. Then I signed to an independent label called Current Records in Toronto that had, Martha and the Muffins and people like that, and did another album with a band called Double Dare that went out through Polygram. So that was another 2 or 3 years of my life. And I guess by that time, as a songwriter and a performer, I really felt I'd done a lot, and the grueling touring and everything started to take its toll after a while. And I was always interested in the business side. I, in the end, finished up doing quite a bit of the business side of the band. So when I got a chance to join a small label called Intrepid Records out of Toronto, I took a stab at that and really enjoyed it. And then developed relationships then with exporting independent Canadian artists at that time. It was the beginning of the whole Bare Naked Ladies indie cassette, if you maybe recall. I think you probably do.
Yep.
And then starting to go out internationally to the New York Music Seminar in New York, the Berlin Festival, and most importantly, South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. That was just a fledgling little festival at that time. And that's when I met those folks, and subsequently a few years later got a chance to start my own festival with partners in Toronto called North by Northeast.
So that was inspiration, was the South by Southwest, and it's clever that we were able to have a mirror reflection of it there too.
Well, we were able to do that without being sued because they were partners. They had a small piece of the company. So yeah, it was a very, very exciting time. Again, the whole independent strategy for artists was starting to come to the forefront, and so that's what I did. I was managing director for 18 years in Toronto and grew that event to have a film festival, a digital component, and massive outdoor shows. I remember doing the Flaming Lips at Yonge and Dundas Square was probably my last big production back in 2012, I think that was. So
wow.
But every East Coast artist that I booked, every East Coast artist that I worked with in my years at North by Northeast, I was so impressed with their attitude, their hard work, their they could play. Like
Yeah.
they're great players here. So when the opportunity came as a chance to work with East Coast musicians, the ECMA job became open, and wasn't really planning on it, but it's a great opportunity to take. Came out here and was offered the position, and never went back. And fortunately, my wife followed me and loves it out here too, so that's good.
Awesome. That's one thing. Once people move to the region, I think just the environment locks a lot of
Yeah,
people down. They don't end up wanting to leave.
yeah, yeah. No,
So,
yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just echoing. It's a great. It's the lifestyle, but it's the musical talent. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really why I'm here. I've never seen so much talent per square meter of real estate than on the East Coast. And I think what we've seen is the diversity of genres, and how much amazing new music is coming out of the East Coast, today's East Coast. If you look back, obviously, because it's a 35-year anniversary that we're heading into next week, so there's a retrospective part of what we're doing, and you can't help but notice how things have moved on since 1989 and the
Mm-hmm.
Maritime Music Awards, which is what they were, a very small thing, into what we are doing today, and how East Coast artists are renowned and admired and appreciated all over the world.
And so, speaking of that, like 35 years is quite a long history for an organization. And I mean, I'm a little embarrassed to say that I've been around longer than that. But as far as the past 35 years, I know you weren't with ECMA the entire time, but you have been in the Canadian music industry that entire time. Is there anything that you would note as the bigger changes that you've seen just in the music scene, not necessarily an industry thing or on the musician side, but just overall as the music scene in Canada? What is the biggest difference that you've seen over the 35 years? Because you have an interesting perspective of starting off as a musician and then also working behind the scenes with great success.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take away, it's the music business, and you can't separate the business from the music if you decide
Mm-hmm.
to choose to follow a career. So obviously, I think the biggest change is the way the business is structured. Ever since Napster, that night Napster was released, it changed overnight everything. And the idea was that you play and practice, and you try and get some kind of exposure, so that an A&R person would sign you to a record deal, and then all your troubles would be over, and you'd ride off into the sunset. Which very rarely happened, but that was the model that people aspired to. That all changed, and like I say, when at the beginning of North by Northeast, that was the whole independent movement, and being independent was no longer considered kind of second rate. It was actually a kind of a cooler way of doing things, and it gave you more control and more options, and waiting for a man to call you up and say, hey, we'll make you into a rock star. With that comes a lot of responsibility and a lot of work, because now every musician is an entrepreneur. Every musician is an independent business.
Yeah.
And you've got to build a team and do that, and not everybody's cut out to do that. And then it's it's a long tail. There were barriers to getting into a studio. It was hard to get your music even recorded technologically wise. The studios were mostly controlled by major labels as well. All that's gone now. You can make a video on your phone. You can record at home. You can do all of that. So there's access to getting your creative elements down so people could hear them and watch them. So that's all there. But there's so much more now to compete with. So the question of rank ordering everything and believing that talent will eventually come through is huge. But I think the structure of superstar artists and starving musicians probably has changed a little bit. It's very, very difficult to make a living as a musician. It really is. It's a kind of a vocation in many ways. But there's maybe an opportunity that now you can actually make a medium income if you decide to choose it and treat it like a small business and move ahead, rather than thinking I'm going to be a superstar or nothing. So maybe there's a reality check that's happened over the years.
For sure. Now, another thing too, these music organizations, most of the artists that we'll have on as guests are fully aware of things like Music Nova Scotia or the ECMA. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I was not as aware of myself as outside as a fan until I started doing podcasting and interviewing people is some of the services and supports that are available from these organizations. So as an example, with the East Coast Music Association, you guys provide mental health services for your members as well, which you did speak about being a musician and then trying to do some of the industry stuff for yourself as a musician, doing it yourself in your younger years. And nowadays, I think it's highlighted even more because of the digital access that people have, like you say. It also really lends itself to every independent artist is do it yourself. Like, even if they don't intend on doing it themselves forever, they all start off that way. So every artist that I ever talked to that ends up doing something else, it's because they were burnt out. So I was really excited to see that there's services available, because the number one complaint about mental health is just that there's not enough services for people, and people can't get connected to people when they need that help. Yeah. But I am aware that ECMA provides that service for their members, and you're doing a lot of promotions with the upcoming music awards and festival in Halifax. So maybe if you want to speak a little bit about the whole initiative there and what the goals are.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it has become the board's priority is to try and help with mental health and wellness. There's a disproportionate number of people in the creative industries, but obviously my focus is music, that do suffer from depression, anxiety, addictions. You know, part of it is the precariousness of the choice, as we talked about that before, and also it can be lifestyle as well, certainly in terms of addiction and substance abuse and all the rest of it. So all of that, we actually did a study. We were, I think, one of the first organizations to do a kind of a study, and the results that came back were quite shocking. There was also a big study done in the UK, but the number of musicians living below the poverty level and the number of musicians that were suffering from mental illness was way above what the average would be. So we decided that we would try and find a way to alleviate that. It's very difficult to get in to see a clinical therapist or a mental health professional. So we've managed to do that. We've got some great support and funding in Nova Scotia to be able to do that, and we've been able to have our members have access to one-on-one counselling, as well as developed a peer group support system as well. This year, there's also been webinars where people come together and share. I mean, it was just amplified so much more during the COVID years too. I mean, that was unbelievable. The amount of demand for our services went through the roof for all kinds of various reasons. I mean, musicians usually, you know, they tour, they play, that's how they make their living, and so within a blink of an eye, you're cut off from doing any of that. And valiant efforts were made definitely to get online and, you know, to do virtual concerts and everything, which were great, definitely, but never really replaced the idea of going out and being on tour again. So we've been able to keep these services in place, and there's a health and wellness center at the ECMAs at the Marriott Hotel for next week. It's very important because artists are under a lot of pressure. They've got multiple showcases. They've been through the process of adjudication to get an ECMA show or a couple of shows. We're bringing in buyers from all over the world. We're bringing professionals from all across Canada. Deals will be made, you know, careers will be advanced in many ways. And so we need a place where artists can actually go and just ground themselves again and find a moment to reconnect with, you know, the reason why they're doing this. And you don't let the business ruin the music, and it's a very difficult balance to maintain, I have to say sometimes.
I'm sure. And well, I feel it myself a little bit being on this end, because there's a lot of similarities in what I'm doing, following people around on shows and everything. And I have been involved in a couple of festivals now, and it does burn you out. There's a lot of work leading up to it and a lot of anticipation. And then when you're in the event, there's your responsibilities to everything that you put the effort into. And then you really are in a very, not necessarily even a party environment, but just everybody celebrating. And there's so much activity. It's easy to just never sleep. And it can really work on you.
Or, you know, the first time you go out on a full tour, I mean, I remember it is unbelievable. It's almost, people drop like flies. It's just impossible to not just your mental health, your physical health as well, but you're traveling, you're touring, your everything is upside down. and you're all geared towards that. That if you're the opening act, you've got maybe a 35-40 minute set, and you're geared toward the whole day is geared towards that. And then there's 23 and a half hours of the day left, and it is such a circus in many ways, and the demands for the touring circuit and what you need to do, because Canada is such a huge country, the traveling is massive. So those are serious pressures on all touring musicians, and you have to learn to deal with that if you're going to if this is your chosen profession.
Yeah. And you have, through the East Coast Music Association, there's a 50/50 fundraiser that's ongoing right now.
Yeah, we've become a sports franchise as well now. We have 2 charity sports events next week. The ECMA Cup, which is a charity hockey game, and it's a 50/50, correct? It's Sound Minds, which is a named grant for Nova Scotia mental health. So all contributions will go there. We've got a great lineup of musicians that are playing. But we've also added, for the first time by popular demand, a ECMA All-Star basketball game on the Wednesday of ECMAs, raising funds for Hot Cocoa Boys as to create a mobile studio. So
cool.
Really pleased to do that.
Yeah, I did notice the last couple of days, my musician friends, a few of them started popping up saying, I got picked for the basketball team. So it's pretty exciting to see everybody.
They're pretty serious. They're pretty serious about it, I hear, It's
sports isn't something we typically cross over in these conversations, but it's fun to see people that I'm familiar with now because I've spent time with them, and I see them as a musician, and now I'm getting to see them flex a little bit of a different muscle, a little bit more competitive than what they're like on stage.
I found that there's a real understanding between sports people and musicians. Their lifestyles are very similar in many ways. There's many sports people, if they couldn't be in sports, they may have been in music, and vice versa, But yeah, there's a real understanding of how their life works and what it takes to be successful. Because you're an athlete as well when you're a musician. You're using your voice. Yeah, you've got to be in good shape. So.
Yeah, one in particular, Andre Petitpas, I was sitting with him at a dinner a day after one of his shows, and he couldn't understand why his legs were sore, and I had to show him video on my phone to show him how much he was jumping up and down during his set. I'm like, that's why your legs are sore. So yeah, absolutely. There's some athletes there. So anyone playing basketball, watch out, because Andre's on one of those teams now. He knows how to jump. So for anyone that wants to go to the East Coast Music Awards and all of the festival and celebrations this week, there's a huge lineup. So the events actually kick off. Is it Sunday when you have your first technical event for the whole event going on?
Well, no, I would say the official opening is Wednesday at City Hall. We have the Jay Win in partnership with the Mi'kmaq Friendships Center. So we're having a blessing, and then that will really launch 4 days of Indigenous celebrations that are going to be taking place on Grand Parade, which is amazingly exciting. We're so thrilled and honored to be part of that. Really
exciting for you to have it right down in the central of downtown too. It's the central area of downtown Halifax.
It is, and I think that's one of the things about this year. I mean, I've been saying, and it is. We had our last big staff meeting on Tuesday, and I think when we put it all together, this is the most ambitious ECMA that I've been involved with for sure. And in all areas, there's so much going on. But the footprint in Halifax, in downtown Halifax, and across the harbour in Dartmouth too, because we have programming in alternate landing. We have the most venues for sure that we've had. We have 11 official venues, and then we have all our partnered stages as well. So there's going to be over 25 venues that are going to be having live music for the duration of ECMA, which is fantastic. Over 500 musicians in town, 200 shows altogether, and a huge diversity of genres. I would challenge anybody that couldn't find something that they would like if they want to go out and see some live music over the 5 days that we're going to be in Halifax. So that's really exciting, and it's a very kind of compact footprint. So there's a chance to really plan your musical adventure, because all these acts have been through a strictly curated program. They submitted to ECMA back in the fall of last year, and We have over 200 jurors all around the world that listen to this and rate it. And, it's a long process before we put the whole program together. And now we're offering that so people can go and with their wristband or their pass, or, they can club hop as much as possible and see some of their favorites, but maybe discover something new. I think that's one of the best things about music, is always discovering a new artist and it becoming your new favorite that you can share with your friends.
Now, I'm typically a wristband guy if I'm going to a festival like this, so I can just maximize my dollar spent and get in as many shows as possible.
Yeah.
But where should people be looking to get tickets? Like, there's a few different options for accessing the events.
There are. Not too confusing, though. It's pretty. If you go to ECMA.com, just go to the website, click on the tickets page. It'll lay out the different options that you have, and you can purchase them right there. The Weekend Warrior wristband is what you're referring to, is a really good way to go out, and you don't pay cover at any of the official venues. And it means literally, because we're on a showcase format, which is 30 minutes on, 15-minute changeover, you can schedule as much music as you possibly can in an evening. You can see a lot of acts. And then download our new app, which is fantastic. It's for both platforms. You can get it. And East Coast Music, thank you. There you go. Yeah. Hopefully all the bugs are worked out, but it seems to be going great. And that can really help you plan to get the most out of the 5 days. 5 days in May, I think we're calling it, with a reference to Blue Rodeo there. So
I'm also I work in software testing as well outside of the music stuff I do, and I have been playing with the app looking for bugs. So the last day or so, it's been working quite well for me. So
good.
That's a good sign. And so, aside from buying tickets, where you'd mentioned that the footprint being so large in the HRM area, for people that are walking around in public and maybe they don't need a wristband because they're not planning on catching all the different venues, there's a bunch of free events available as well. I know some of the partner stages may be free, but outside of that, you have Fan Fest and some family events.
We do, yeah. We're closing down Argyle Street, and first section up to Sackville will be the stage there with 4 incredible performers playing. So it's Dee Dee Austin, it's Jordan, it's Kelly Loader, and it's Neon Dreams are coming back from dominating the world back to Halifax. So
that's amazing.
They're going to play, and then you get a chance to kind of hang out with them at the Fan Fest and maybe get something signed. So that's going to be from noon till 3 o'clock on the Saturday. And then the other side of Sackville, in the next block, is a family fest. So there'll be all kinds of fun things for the kids down there with circus performers and who knows what. So that'll be on Saturday. And if the weather forecast holds, I think it'll be okay too. So
I'm planning on having some family come up to visit me because I'll be up there attending the event. I'm going to actually be hanging around one of the partner showcases, conducting some interviews.
Oh, great.
And I'll be at the award show and all the standard fare, but I do have some family joining me on the Saturday to take in some of the family events and see what's going on there. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
So for the host city of Halifax, it was a big win for them to be able to host it, but I'm sure with being the 35th anniversary that you were looking to have an area where you could do a big celebration. So it was nice that they're able to accommodate that. But in the future, you guys move it around every year. You try to do a different province.
We do. Yeah, there is a cycle that it goes through.
So what's the big pull for? Is it the cities are begging you to come and bring in all the tourism dollars, or what's the pull there? Or are you guys seeking people out?
It's New Brunswick. There's 3 cities that can host. So Moncton, Fredericton, and St. John. So they tend to work that out amongst the 3 cities, and so it can be. When we were in Fredericton last year, it was actually 15 years because it's a 5-year cycle. Because the ECMA, when the association was set up originally, even though there are 4 provinces, there are 5 regions according to the ECMA. So Cape Breton gets its own distinct reason for very good reasons. So we come to Nova Scotia twice in the 5-year cycle, Sydney and also Halifax. And that's really in terms of the size of the event, in terms of hotels and general infrastructure. those are the cities that can host us. We're in Charlottetown next year for 2024, and starting the process for St. John's, Newfoundland in 2025. So
exciting.
Working at least 2.5 to 3 years ahead. It takes that long. It's been 3 years in the planning to get next week's event all in place. So it's a lot of organizing.
Well, and it seems like it's planned, but being that you say 3 years, I have my my Track 1 beer.
You've got the whole collection. Amazing.
So that was from Sydney from 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And then the Fredericton Track 2.
Yeah. That was Grim Ross. That was the local beer. And now this is Garrison.
Yeah. So this year's is a Garrison beer.
Yeah.
And I do like the QR code.
Yes, that takes us to the playlist. So, but just to be clear, each of these are the custom-made beer, limited time only, just during ECMA. So it's not any of their normal products. It's actually a one-off. So
yeah, so these are just available while quantities last. I have obviously been picking them up annually, but
well, we appreciate that because
they definitely stick out.
50 cents from each can goes back to the association to help with musicians. So you're drinking for a very good cause. So that's good.
And is there anything of note that maybe I'm missing? Because there is a lot of events going on. I have a full weekend of preparation planned for my East Coast DNA interviews, and there's a lot on that app for me to digest.
I think we've covered most. I can't play favorites, but one of my favorite parts of the whole event is the Sunday afternoon Songwriters Circle, because that's kind of the last big official event that we produce before we get into the volunteer party and everything later on. And I always just love the songwriting process where you get to sit down and hear how the song is deconstructed and played in its simplest form, with one guitar or one keyboard. So that's taking place on the Sunday over at the casino, and there's some fantastic artists playing there. So
something worth sticking around for then.
For sure. Yes, absolutely. I mean, Thursday night's big award show. We have 13 live performances, the most live music on any award show that I know of, and we're giving out 15 awards, and it's going to be a really star-studded night with some special moments that you'll get to see about. And we're streaming all around the world, and we're broadcasting all across Canada on the Rogers platforms as well. So anybody who wants to watch it can go see it. But if you want to see it live, there are a few tickets left at Scotiabank Centre. So grab those very soon.
It's very exciting. Hopefully people get out there and get their tickets and participate in the free events. And as well, if anyone's looking for us when we're on site, we'll be hanging around down the Brown Hound a lot. But I'll be bombing around if anyone's looking for us. I'm probably the guy with an iPhone in the way of your shot. And we'll be posting throughout the weekend different events, probably get some live streams in there from some of the performances. And maybe I'll run into you as well as we're making our rounds there, Andy.
I'll be out and about for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I hope to see you on the street enjoying all the great music.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, and wish you another successful week, and looking forward to the years ahead.
Thank you, Darcy. Appreciate it very much.
Bye.